or you are actually the seal itself. So what is this telling us? Satan was involved by God's design with the patterns of creation, and that he was involved in sealing them. Now let's go on even further. We want to see what the word perfection means. You're going to be amazed, because the word in Hebrew is toknith. It means pattern, measurement, or proportion. You had the seal of the pattern. You had the seal of the patterns of creation. And so we can say here, you had the seal of perfection. You are the one who seals the measurements, the patterns of the perfect plans. So, or it can also mean you are the seal on those measurements. This can mean either way. But whatever it means, whether it means he had the seal or he was the seal, Satan knew the patterns of creation. And the three most important patterns of creation is a suitability pattern between us and God, between the man and woman, and between us and the earth. Does everyone understand this so far? So we can say it this way: Satan sealed God's patterns of creation. He was the protector of those patterns. God is the one who gave him the seal of perfection. So that means he understood chemistry, the music patterns. He understands sound, light, color, physiology, all the different patterns of creation. What's most important is he understood that the patterns between the man, God and us, man and the woman, and us and the earth. And his job was actually to protect those patterns. Now, do I have to tell you what he did? He betrayed the Lord, and instead of protecting those patterns, he attacked them. Okay? That's what we need to understand about Satan. Now, it also says that he was full of wisdom. And the word in here is holcomb, means wisdom or skill in the Hebrew. So what is that telling us about Lucifer? Well, if we look at what it says here, the Lord by wisdom founded the earth, by understanding he established the heavens, by his knowledge the deeps were broken up and the skies dripped with dew. So, not only did Satan seal the patterns, he had full understanding of them. Let me say it again. Not only did Satan seal the patterns of creation, he had full understanding of those patterns. So he understood that the woman came from the man, and therefore the woman was suitable to the man, that she had equivalence, she had distinction, she had pattern, she had passion, she had oneness in life. He understood all of that. What a lot of Christians don't understand, he understood. And God is saying that because he had the same word that's talking about God's wisdom is talking about Satan. Satan had intimate knowledge of God's skill. Okay, now there's actually more. It says also, well, let me say it here. Satan had intimate knowledge of God's skill. That's written in your book. Also, he was perfect in beauty. The word perfect means entirely, completely beautiful. So this creature, there was nothing common about him. Now remember I told you in Tyre, they would actually put jewels in, stud the walls with jewels. They would put a diamond for a doorknob. They would put ivory in the decks of their of their ships. And what they were known for, they even took that which was very common and made it very beautiful. And Satan had the ability to take the smallest thing and make it look beautiful. He had the knowledge of how to do it. And, yes. Of God's skill, certainly, yeah. Now this should be in your book as well, I hope. So far we understand he sealed the patterns, but he didn't just seal them, he understood them. He had knowledge of them, and now we're hearing that he was absolutely perfect in beauty. Why was Satan perfect in beauty? Part of it had to do with his job. God made him beautiful the same way when a couple's getting married, the bridesmaid looks gorgeous. The same way when the king is holding court, all the people waiting on him, the ladies in waiting and the courtmen, they're all dressed in their finest. They're in velvet, they're in beautiful clothes. Because of their high position, their closeness to the throne, actually it requires of them to be dressed beautifully. And because of the high position that God gave Satan, he actually made him perfect in beauty. Just like the creation was perfect, holy, completely, he was completely, totally beautiful. Well, how serious is that? I will tell you this. He not only was beautiful, he knew how to make beautiful. So let's say I come to teach you, and I have diamond earrings, and I have a beautiful emerald necklace and a ruby bracelet, and I'm just dripping with jewels. Okay? And I come in and you're like astounded. Well, I know I'm beautiful anyway, but you're astounded by the jewels, okay? Just a little joke there. And so you're astounded by the beauty of the jewels, and you're like, you come up to me and say, Judy, you look absolutely beautiful. Those jewels on you look beautiful. And I say, well, I want to tell you a secret. I actually made these jewels. I'm a jeweler. So not only do I wear the jewels and they beautify me, I made them. I know how to make jewelry. Okay? Then you're like, wow, you're not just beautiful, you know how to make beautiful. This is what it was with Satan. He not only was beautiful because of his high position to actually protect the patterns in the garden. His job was to protect the patterns of creation in the garden. Say, how do you know that? Let's look and see what it says next. Except I put this down. Okay? In the same prophecy here. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Now we know the king of Tyre was not in Eden. This is talking about Satan. But how did he get there? This will amaze you. Well, we're not going to get... Oh. Okay, we'll come to it in a moment. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. Now he's talking about how Satan was covered in jewels. Remember I talked about the king of Tyre? They had jewels everywhere, okay? They beautified themselves with jewels. Now God is talking about Satan being covered with jewels, but it's also referring to the king of Tyre. I'll tell you about this in a moment so you'll understand why Satan actually was clothed in celestial gems. Not the gems of the earth, celestial gems, and you're going to see where it came from. So what did he have? The ruby, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the lapis lazuli, the turquoise, and the emerald, and the gold. I mean, he's got the whole jewelry store on him. Okay? He walked in and said, I'll take it all. And he's wearing all these jewels. Why? Why is that his covering? Because it tells us that every precious stone was his covering, meaning he was clothed in these precious stones. Where did those stones come from? The throne room of God. He's actually clothed in celestial gems from the throne room of God. Why does he have this above all the angels? Why is he clothed that way? Because he stood in the throne room. Now hold on, we're going to see it in the scriptures. I'm just going to explain a little bit more here when he says, the workmanship of your settings and sockets was in you on the day that you were prepared. So I just have explained to you that settings and sockets in this situation is referring to jewelry. The workmanship means just what I told you. You not only were clothed in these beautiful gems, you know how to make beautiful. In other words, just like I explained, that if I came to a party and I said, I'm wearing these jewels, but I also made this jewelry, Satan understood how to make beautiful. There's no human on earth that understands as much as him about how to make beautiful. Now, I want you to, we're going to look at this. This is a very serious verse. Have any of you ever studied this verse before? It might not look familiar to you. Because in the King James, it says it differently. I'm going to show you how this was translated differently and how that translation brought a lot of confusion about this verse. So this is the New American Standard. Now we're going to look at it. We read it in the New American Standard. We're going to look at how it was translated in the King James Version. Now, before we look at that, let me ask you a question. How many of you were told that Satan is the god of music and he was the god of music in heaven? How many of you were told that, okay? Almost everybody. Common misunderstanding, and it's one reason why in the 70s, like when I got saved in 71. When I became a Christian in 1971, drums were just coming into church. Of course, that probably was not an issue in Africa, but in the U.S., it was the organ and the piano. And they're like, don't bring the drums in here. Don't bring the drums into church. This is the work of Satan. He's in charge of music, and now the music sounds like Satan's music. Right? Did you have anything like that here where you had, oh, okay. Okay, and everybody's like, yeah, you know what it says? It says. And here's where the mistake is, okay? All right, so the King James Version is where they got this from. And it says, the workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee the day that thou wast created. Or, in the New King James, the workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you on the day you were created. Now, these are very different translations, and they did write the difference. The difference in the translation is what made this mistaken idea that Satan is the god of music. He is way past an angel of music. He wasn't even part of the seraphim. He's a cherubim. He's a cherub, actually. And so, what is tabrets? Tambourine. Okay? What do you do to a tambourine? Tell me. Tap it. You tap it, right? Okay? What is pipes? What does that refer to? Flutes, yeah, recorders, flutes, and those things. And those have a hole. They have holes in them, right? And you do this, or however you do it. Okay, and so it's a word that means hole, but it can also represent a flute. So let's just, I keep putting this down. Thank you. Let's look at this carefully. Now this part, you have to follow me, and if you have a question, don't hesitate. Because this is an area Satan has brought much confusion in. And we want that cloud of confusion to be gone in Jesus' name. Okay? So, here we have it. When the New American Standard, it says settings and sockets. And here it's talking about jewelry making. What's the context of the verse? That Satan is covered in jewels, right? So the context is talking about jewels. So, but in this one, it makes it seem that it's talking about music. I mean, what is the difference here? Okay? I'm going to show you the Hebrew. Tabrets and timbrels, we said, equals tambourine, pipes are flutes, and here's why the difference in translation. Okay. The word toph actually means tap. And so they thought, tap, what do you tap? A tambourine or some kind of drum. But actually, it also is a word that means putting a jewel in the setting and tapping it into place. Do you see that? Okay? These verses weren't about music at all. The workmanship of your settings and sockets means Satan, as somebody covered in the jewels, you understood how to make beautiful the way a jeweler knows how to tap a jewel into its setting. In the same way, negeb, it means hole, but it also means a jeweler's socket. Okay, so let's see what's happened here. Here's the hole, the setting. The jeweler's placing the jewel in the hole, and he's tapping it into place. Do you see how this goes along with the context? We're not talking about music, we're talking about jewels. And so what they did is they took this word that can be used several different ways, and they translated it to mean what it would mean if they were talking about music. But we weren't. So, let's go back here. The workmanship of your settings, those the tapping, how you tap jewels into place, and sockets, those beautiful settings that you create, those holes was in you. On the day that you were created, they were prepared. Here's what he's saying. When God created Satan, he clothed him in celestial jewels. You're going to see how I know those are from the throne room. I'm just telling you now for ease of understanding. So God took from the jewels around his throne, and he clothed Satan in it, because Satan was the protector, the guardian of the garden. And he was there to protect the patterns of creation, the suitability patterns, the passions, the truth, all the 5 things that we went through that he was supposed to protect. That was his job. But God made him absolutely beautiful, and he had the knowledge of how to make beautiful. Have you understood this? Okay, so when those mistranslations came into being, people said, see, he's over music. If only that's all he understood. If he only understood music, we wouldn't have such a battle on our hands. But he understands music, biology, geometry, geology, anthropology, anatomy. He understands the 3 patterns of creation. He gets it all. Why? Because he was in charge of protecting the patterns. Does everyone understand this? Okay, so that means when he attacks us, he has more knowledge than we do about those patterns. And that's where we get messed up. But God is victor, and he is going to show us how to win. Okay, so here's our conclusion. Workmanship means the skill, the craftsmanship, or the handiwork to do it. And God not only made Satan beautiful, he gave him the skill to make beautiful. Okay, now, the next verse. Let me say this about the jewels. Remember how Paul calls him an angel of light? Okay, so how do jewels work? When light is shining on the jewels, then they're shining, right? So when you go into a jeweler, they have the jewels on a black cloth, and then they got this bright light, right? And you're going, whoa, that really shines. And God intended that the light bearer, named Lucifer, that the light of God would shine on the jewels and display the beauty of God's throne room. In other words, I'm a servant that has come from the throne room, and I represent God, and I'm actually bejeweled in the gems from around his throne. Remember when Zechariah was talking to the angel Gabriel, and he's like, I don't think so. He said, your wife's going to have a baby. And he's like, I don't think so. How is that going to happen? And the angel says, I am Gabriel, and I stand in the very presence of God. Not every angel has the position that angel had, that Gabriel had. He was saying, I am a top general in the army, and you're arguing with me. And so the angel strikes him dumb. He can't speak until the child is really what we call christened, receives his name. And so in the same way, Satan had even a higher position, I believe, than Gabriel or Michael, and that his job was given, you are to protect the patterns of creation. I have beautified you to do it, and I've allowed you to understand the patterns of creation. Is your mind blown yet? Okay, there's more. We're not done yet. Okay. Now, here's how we know we're talking about Satan. In the next verse in Ezekiel, he says, you were the anointed cherub who covers, and I placed you there. How did Satan get in the garden? God put him in the garden. Why? That was his job. That was his job, to protect the garden. There's going to be there's something amazing here. Let me make sure I say this correctly. Now, first of all, if you've heard the word cherub, you actually think of like this. Have you ever seen this on greeting cards? This is I want to tell you something. This is not a cherub. A cherub is a warring angel. He is dressed for battle. He is powerful. He's in charge. He's not a fat little baby with some little wings, okay? That's not who he is. So, yes. Before, yes. Yes, God has created him. We don't know when or how. Okay? But we do know it's before man is created.
Okay, what I'm understanding here, it is Satan was guarding the garden, yes, before man came into existence.
Yes, it's actually in the planning stages.
So Satan understands the pattern of creation.
Exactly.
So that is how we are answering the question, how now did he came in? Thank you.
So, yes. Okay. Is there another mic there? Here, we'll give this mic to you. Let's see where we are here.
Very interesting. Now, Pastor,
Yes.
Eden is on earth.
Eden is on earth, yes.
Satan-
I'm repeating so I make sure I know what you're saying. Eden is on earth, yes.
Now, Satan was cast down.
But that's not happened yet. We're not to that point when he's cast down. We're almost there. You're jumping ahead again. There are penalties for jumping ahead. And here, I'll spell it for you. COKE. You owe me a Coke when you jump ahead. Okay.
Yeah, Pastor Judy, I know you are messing us up because you are taking us deep into searching scripture and getting very powerful revelations.
Good.
This woke me up in the Exodus 25 when God was instructing Moses on the construction of the ark
Yes.
and how he was making the covering cherubs, the two cherubs that were
I'm
covering.
going to get to it. You're
That
jumping
means
ahead.
it looks like Satan. Looks like Satan was actually one of those cherubs or in that kind of position.
In that, I'll explain it since we're there.
As
I
Lucifer,
apologize,
sorry.
Job, that I didn't explain you. We're going to talk about that, but if we get to it, that's in the teaching. But here's what you want to understand. So the Ark of the Covenant, made by God's pattern, right? God tells you how long, how wide, everything. The top of that box is solid gold. That's the mercy seat. On top of that are the two cherubim, and they're in fact, this is perfect with what I'm going to say. The angels are covering the box. What is the idea? They are protecting the pattern of the covenant. Okay, they're protecting. So that was a picture of angels that have been, and those were cherubim, because cherubim are guardian, protecting angels. Okay, so when God wants to show that his angels are on the side of Israel to protect the covenant, he puts the golden angels over the mercy seat. The mercy seat is the throne of God in the earth at this point. And God says, my presence is above the mercy seat. The angels are protectors of the patterns of the covenant. Wow, right?
Yes.
Okay. But you're going to see how important the wings are. The wings are really important. Let me get back to it. Let me see. In fact, here's how close I was to telling you this. It was the next point. Okay? So Job was penalized because he went way ahead, but you only went a little bit, so you don't owe me a Coke. You don't owe me a Coke. Okay, so this, we don't really know exactly how it looked, but you can see this top part is the mercy seat. And these are where the cherubim are extending their wings. It's very important that the wings are part of their protection. Okay? The wings are part of their protection. Let's see now. How do I know that? Let's go back to our verse. So we said you were the anointed cherub who covers. The word covers in Hebrew is sakak here, to overshadow, to screen. It's used to describe a hedge around a garden. What's he saying? The wings of the angel were like the hedge around the garden. How was the garden a protected place? Satan's wings were around it. You were the anointed cherub who covers, means that he was actually protecting the garden. Just the way we see the cherubim protecting the covenant, the patterns of the covenant. This is astounding. This helps us realize the betrayal that has happened here. That Satan was an angel given such a close intimacy with even us. And then how he turned that into something where he could get what he wanted. So as the star of the morning, or Lucifer, the light bearer, he was the head cherub, anointed to protect the garden. He was gifted to do it, he was beautiful to do it, and he was actually sealing the patterns of those creation. And that's why he understood that if you upset those patterns, if you get them to put their horizontal suitabilities in the place of their vertical suitabilities, you've got them. You are ruling them. So you can be an anointed pastor preaching, but if the things of the world are more important, whether sex or an opposite sex, or whether it's the things the world offers and passions of the world, and God is not first, Satan's got you. He's got you. Because this is how he works. Now, that doesn't mean he has you hook, line, and seeker. He's not, you're not possessed. You may not even be completely oppressed, but he's got you. And this is why Satan works hard to bring pastors down, but with the opposite sex and with the things of the world. Because he knows if he can get the pastor to be seduced that way, he's got the church. So this is very important, right? Let's go back to, I want to go back to a place where we kind of got a little bit, I missed something here that I want to say. Okay, let me go back to the wings here for a moment. Not those wings, these wings. Anointed is the word mishmak, which means his wings were anointed to do the job. Okay? It's the same word that they used when they talked about a priestly anointing, where God has empowered someone to do the job. So God empowered him, he equipped him, he beautified him, and he gave him the knowledge of the patterns of creation. I'm going to go ahead. Do we all understand so far? Okay, let's go back to Satan actually is the hedge around the garden, spiritually the hedge around the garden. Now we're going to learn about the celestial gems that are around the throne of God. So he's told us something here. He's told us Satan is in heaven, he gets kicked out. But before that happens, he has access to the garden. In fact, God himself put him in the garden. Now we're going to find out he had access to something else. It says, you are on the holy mountain of God. You walked in the midst of the stones of fire. What are the stones of fire? Now this word stone can mean like a rock outside in the gravel there, or it can mean a precious stone. It can mean a jewel. Okay? So if we say jewel here, just like if I go into jewelry and say, oh, show me a different stone of this emerald. Okay? It's the same way in the Hebrew. And now he's calling them stones of fire. So here's what we're learning about Satan from this. Satan had access to the very throne room of God. And in the throne room of God are beautiful, precious, celestial gems. The ones on earth are just a mere shadow of what is around the throne of God. Why are they called stones of fire? Because the throne room of God is consumed in fire. There is fire everywhere. Now, when you look at some of the prophetic things where it talks about the fire, Daniel sees the fire, and different ones that have visions, they're seeing the fire around Jesus and his throne. And this is a holy fire. Now, I don't know if we're going to... I'm just looking ahead because I know we won't hear the whole teaching, so I might teach this part right here so we don't miss it. What does the fire of God contain? I'll do this briefly in case we come up to it soon enough. The fire of God actually contains his character qualities. It is his purity, and it is his skill, and it is his passion for us. All that is in the fire of God, and so is one thing else, his judgment. So the fire of God contains the purity of who he is, and it contains his skill, and it also contains his judgment. So how does God introduce himself to Moses? In the fire. It's fire from his very throne room. And it's not consuming the bush. The bush is not being burned up. It's a holy fire from the very throne room of God. And God is speaking to him from the fire. Because in God's fire is his purity of heart and his skill and his judgment. So what happened when Nadab and Abihu did not take the coal from the brazen altar when they put it in their censer? This is when the tabernacle is being consecrated. And God tells them to do the censer, the incense. And he says, make sure you take a coal from the brazen altar. Why? Those coals had blood on them. The blood of sacrifice. That's the coal that had to be put in the censer pan. God doesn't explain that. He just says, here's what you're to do. They said, we got a better idea. And so they put in their own fire, and they go in. Don't ever tell God you have a better idea. Just note to self. Okay, so he goes in. They go in there, and they start burning. And what happens? The fire comes out of the censer and destroys them. God's fire has so much purity in it that when it comes near sin and disobedience, it must judge it. You understand? Now, we have to understand what fire is to understand the punishment of Satan. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so we'll come back to where we're at. Okay? That's okay, I get ahead of myself? No. I have to lay this ground. Okay. So, Satan is walking around. Now, here's what we want to know about angels. And of the angels, it says in Hebrews, he says, who makes his angels winds and ministers a flame of fire. So angels carry some of the fire from the throne of God. Okay? So I'm not going to all the verses in that because we don't have time, but you know these verses in which people are seeing visions and they see the fire. And there's a reason why fire came down on Mount Sinai. In fact, the moment fire came down on Mount Sinai for the visitation, what did God say? No one can touch this mountain. Why? Because his holiness was in the fire. And he says, if somebody disobeys and they touch the mountain, you can't even touch him to kill him. You have to stone him or you have to shoot him through with an arrow. Do not touch his body. Why? Because the fire of God contains the holiness of God. And so when they're visited by fire, what happens when Moses comes to the flaming bush? Take your shoes off. Why? Why? God did not want the dust of this polluted world anywhere near his holy fire. Do you understand? Okay. So fire contains the character qualities of God, but also his skill and his judgment. Now, let's see where we're at here. Now, we know that angels contain the fire of God, and that fire is from around his throne. So let's go back to Ezekiel. We learned that you were the anointed cherub that covers with the overshadowing with his wings, actually. We learned he was on the holy mountain, the mountain of God. He walked in the midst of the stones of fire. And now we're going to learn something. You were blameless. This is about Satan. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. Satan is the only creature who corrupted himself. We all have help. Demons, okay, they help us corrupt ourselves. Satan, there was no corruption, there was no lying in the earth, and God created him to be pure and holy. And then he corrupted himself. So when people are like, where did he come from? Well, he was a perfectly pure angel, top angel, who stood in the throne room of God, who walked even among the gems that surround the throne of God and the fire that lights up those gems. And God took from those gems and he clothed Satan, Lucifer, in those gems. And then he said, your wings are anointed to bring a covering around the garden. And I give you the seal of the very patterns of creation. And this is the creature that then corrupted himself. You see how serious this is? Yeah, it's beyond words. Okay. Now he's going to question. Yes. We have a microphone for you.
Would that be the reason why Adam may have mistaken him to be still carrying the glory of God, that he listened to him?
Well, you know, there's something interesting about a snake, okay? And we will get to this, okay? That Satan had enough knowledge of the patterns of creation, he could actually take the form of a snake. And the snake in the garden isn't the ugly, icky, awful things we see now, okay? And you can see this sometimes in a snake. You know that shimmering sometimes on a snake? Okay, that's just like a shadow of what was left. He came shimmering with the jewels, but he came as a snake. Okay, so we'll get to why Satan was able to deceive Eve and seduce Adam. Okay, next lesson actually. Okay, so you're pretty close to like jumping ahead.
Okay, Pastor Judy. Yes. Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm just thinking with him, Satan, with all this beauty, jewelry, and all this, the glory he had, all that getting into a snake. But we'll get to that next as you, so I don't want to get into that. So.
Yeah, mine was, I was still thinking about that scripture. Until unrighteousness
Yes.
was found in you. And I'm just thinking,
Yes.
up to this time, up to this point, there was nothing known like sin
Correct.
anywhere.
Correct. No lying.
And
no sin.
I'm thinking, no wonder the judgment was very severe. So this is the genesis of sin.
The Genesis what? Of sin. Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Actually, there's no sin anywhere until he corrupts himself. And I'll tell you this. How does he corrupt himself? He looks at Jesus sitting on the throne of creation and says, I should be there. Look how beautiful I am. Look how knowledgeable I am. Look how skillful I am. I'll just throw this in. I'm jumping ahead, but sometimes I'm very generous with this. That's how he deceives us. To look to our beauty, our knowledge, and our skill, and display that as who we are, instead of this, I am the suitability of God. It's absolutely jealousy. Jealousy and selfish ambition. Yeah, he wants a place that belongs to Jesus only, and he still wants that place. And he thinks, well, I can't get you off your throne, but I can take your inheritance from you. Creation and us. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yes, he has a microphone there for you.
Wow. I think I'm getting a bit mixed up.
Oh, and you did.
I was young.
You came in late, so you missed some of the foundation. Yeah.
And I apologize for reporting
No worries,
late.
but that's why it's hard to follow, I think.
I was young and now I'm old. And there are some things that appear that you are changing now, my theology.
Okay.
And the reason is, in Genesis 1 and 2,
Okay.
I was made to believe. It says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Yes.
And God does not create anything that is deformed.
That
So
is
everything
what?
was perfect.
Yes.
Everything was perfect.
Yes.
The world was perfect.
Yes.
But then between verses 1 and 2, the devil was thrown into the world. and he came and messed up everything.
Yes.
And I'm also made to believe that's why dinosaurs disappeared.
I missed that. That's why what?
When historians, sorry, my accent is.
And I am deaf, and you
Okay.
don't know that, but I
So
am deaf.
when historians and archaeologists dig, the remains of those people who are ahead of us, the fossils,
Okay,
they tell us that they are millions of years old.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And therefore, it is
They
explained.
haven't told me anything.
it is
I don't
ex-
know about you,
It
but
is
I-
explained those ancient beings whose fossils are millions of years old
You mean like the
were
dinosaurs?
we're
We're going to
fossils.
talk about the dinosaurs.
They were in Genesis 1.
Yes.
When Satan was thrown into the world that God had created, it was beautiful. They had form. He came and messed up everything.
That's right.
So God, from two, was coming to recreate. The devil had already fallen. The theology that I've been made to believe was that God was giving Adam and Eve a chance to prove that the devil was not all powerful. And that's
Okay.
why in Genesis 1:28, he gave Adam and Eve the dominion. He
Right.
gave them the power, the authority. Just because he knew Satan was just roaming around. And he would come and deceive. But he gave them power and authority.
Can I just correct that just a little bit?
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, I know. Let me correct
And I-
it a little bit.
And I think
What the
that's-
Bible does not tell us is when and how the angels were created. It does not tell us that. We also don't know how long Adam and Eve were in the garden before. They could have been there for years for all we know. We don't know. It makes it feel like the next day Satan showed up. We don't know. We just know this, that on the timeline, he was blameless, and I believe he was operating as a protector of the patterns and of the garden. So I think he was created before the earth. And then the earth was created. And then, somewhere after the time in which God had put Adam and Eve in the garden, somewhere he corrupted himself. Okay? And we don't know how long that was. Regarding the fossils and dinosaurs, we're getting to that. Okay? Okay, one more question. It's a comment?
Yes,
Okay?
I just needed to make a comment on what my brother has said over
Yes.
there. What we see written is not written chronologically.
That's right.
So it's not in order of events. So you may read verse 1 and it's not following verse 2 in order of how things happened. And so if we read that way, we are likely to miss the point. Yeah.
That's a good point. Thank you. Are you taking no credit for the confusion? Is that what I'm hearing?
I may have taught this, and I've taught it many times.
Okay.
About Genesis 1:1 and 2.
Okay.
But now, from what I'm hearing, there is a shift.
There's a little difference in the
There's a
timeline.
shift that is talking.
Yeah.
That has, until today, that has been my theology.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm here to change that,
Yes.
Apostle. Okay. Do you want to keep one more question? Okay. Because some of these things we are going to answer if we have time. So I'm just thinking that. Go ahead.
Okay, my take is that until unrighteousness was found in him, when the devil strayed, it must have caused a lot of mess in the universe.
It did. First, he was kicked out of heaven. We're going to see it. These verses will explain more. So if I proceed, I think you're going to see some of what happened. Is that okay? All right. Because I hate for me not to get to it, okay, but I'm happy to answer questions. I love Q&A. So it's not, I don't feel interrupted or anything. I just think we are going to see some things here. Okay, so now we see the part where he's thrown down. So by the abundance of your trade, he's talking to Tyre here, you were internally filled with violence. In other words, Tyre became this rich nation, and Alexander the Great built that land bridge to get to it, and when he got in there, he completely destroyed it. He killed almost everybody, unless only those who were in the temple of Melkart were not killed. So there's hundreds and thousands of people. And then it says, I have cast you as profane from the mountain of God. Mountain of God represents the throne room of God. So once unrighteousness was found in Satan, God threw him out of the throne room. And he went, I believe, I can't prove this, but I believe he went straight to earth. Immediately went to earth. Okay? Everybody get this? Okay. So he was thrown out. Now you're going to find out he still goes into the throne room. Yeah, he does. How is that possible? Well, we'll find out. Okay. And now we hear this. This is actually, this part is actually in the future. Again, you have to understand, he talks about the past, then he jumps to the future, and then he goes to the present. So he's jumping to the future here, even though he's using past tense. Here's what he's saying. I have destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Okay, what is God saying there? Remember I told you that the fire of God has holiness, his skill, and his judgment in it, and also the passion. Like his heart burns for us. We understand that kind of terminology. My heart is burning in love for you. That's all in the fire of God. The fire of God was shared with Satan. He received an impartation of fire from the throne room. And what was that fire? That's how God imparted skill to him. So remember the workmanship of your settings and sockets. So he had knowledge, he had skill, which means that God actually put a fire inside of Satan that came from his throne room. Now he's talking about judgment. We all know that hell is fire, right? And we all know it's very low. Here's what he's telling us here. When I judge you, when I completely destroy you, and it's a done deal in God's eye, that's why he's saying it in past tense. When I do that, I am taking fire from my throne room, that holy fire that has to judge sin, and I'm creating a place called hell from the fire around my throne, and that's where you're going to end up. There's more to it, but I won't say it yet. So part of the fire from hell actually comes from the holy fire around the throne room of God. Why does he do that? Because Satan profaned. Didn't we just read that? He profaned that place. And he couldn't defile God, but he came in his defilement, and he stood in the holy fire. And God said, because you did that, because you stood in the holy fire around my throne, I will take from the holy fire, the very fire you stood in before me, and that will become your judgment. Do you understand this? Okay. All right, there's still more. There always is. So, he's telling us why. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. So we know God beautified him. But what happened to him is the same thing that happened to the king of Tyre. The king of Tyre said, look at me, I'm gorgeous, I'm so smart, I'm skilled, and I'm ruling this perfect kingdom. I am a god. And Satan did the same thing. Look how beautiful I am. He acted as if his beauty came from himself, instead of he was beautified by God. Do you hear the difference? Okay? Then that pride was, he twisted his beauty and said, I'm the source of my beauty, therefore I'm greater and better than anyone, even Jesus. I should rule. You corrupted your wisdom by reason of your splendor. You looked at that beauty and you said, now I'm going to take the knowledge I have that God gave me, I'm going to use it for myself. All because he thought he was so great and so beautiful. And then the Lord says, I cast you to the ground. I put you before kings that they may see you. This is yet to come. In the end, when Satan is judged, everyone's going to see that. Even those who end up in hell with him are going to see him judged. God will cast him down into the pit. And here's why it's low. Satan said, I will ascend. I will go above the stars of God. I will be enthroned. God said, you want to be high? You're going very low. You're going to go to the lowest place that's ever been created. It's very literal in his judgment. Do you see this? So the fire, he's in fire because he corrupted the fire of God that was within him, that gave him the knowledge of the patterns of creation. Okay, then he goes on to say, by the multitude of your iniquities and the unrighteousness of your trade, you profaned your sanctuaries. Now, he's talking here. Iniquities, we're going to learn later, if we get to it, what iniquity is. But I'll just say very briefly, iniquity it means twisting. It's sin that comes from the twisting of truth. It's sin that is passed on from generation to generation. Okay? So by the multitude of your twisted sin that comes from twisted truth that's been passed on for generations, and the unrighteousness of your trade, we know with Tyre that has to do with them selling the purple fabrics and then selling the objects and thinking they're great. But here's what we want to point to. You profaned your sanctuaries. What were the sanctuaries of Satan? He had two. One was the throne room of God. He had complete access to the Father. Can you imagine? We can't even see the Father without dropping dead. And Satan could walk into the throne room, there, the Father and the Son right there, and stand in the stones of fire, the beautiful celestial gems, and from that place, he profaned it. Now, he didn't defile it he didn't make it evil. He couldn't do that. But the very fact he came in with evil in his heart, he profaned it. God immediately knew the moment it happened, that his heart was filled with jealousy and selfish ambition, and he throws him out. What is the second sanctuary that he profanes? The Garden of Eden. God had given him access to the garden, and he goes into the garden with all of his iniquity, all of his lies, and all of his darkness, and selfish ambition and jealousy, and he approaches the man and woman, and you know what happens. You know the story. So those are the two sanctuaries that Satan profaned. Everybody with me? Okay. So now, here you're going to learn what else hell is made from. Therefore I brought fire from the midst of you. It has consumed you, and have turned you to ashes on the earth in the eyes of all who see you. Remember, he just said, I'm taking fire from the throne room. That's creating hell. What else is creating hell? The fire that was inside Satan. That's the fire God shared with him. The fire that carried his righteousness, carried his passion, carried his skill, and his judgment. And God said, that very fire that's inside you, that's also part of making hell. Do you see it? Okay. So the very thing that he used to profane his sanctuaries then is turned around to become a judgment. Remember what I told you? When Alexander the Great finally made it to the island, when the land bridge was completed and his soldiers rushed on the city and there were ships around it, it was a big deal. What happens is when the soldiers get inside the city, how do they destroy the city? They light their torches from all the fires around the city, the fires of their skill that made them rich, where they made the gold and the silver purified, where they made jewelry, where they did glass blowing, and all of that fire ended up being the very fire that destroyed them. Do you see it? It's a picture of Satan. In the same way that the king of Tyre thought he was great because he was beautiful and skilled and knowledgeable, and therefore he's a god and he sits in the seat of gods. For that same arrogance, Satan is going to be put into hell for eternity when judgment comes. And when that happens, he will be burning forever in the fires that he himself defiled. Amazing, right? It's amazing. Wow. Okay. We go into where we need to be. So we're almost at the end of this lesson. Here's what we learned. God glorified Lucifer and put him in Eden to protect the patterns of suitability. But then in the greatest betrayal of all time, Satan seduced the bride of Christ to himself. You know what this is like? This is like the Secret Service in the United States. They protect the president and his wife. And they are allowed in the living quarters of the president and his wife within the White House. So now just imagine the president is in a meeting, and the Secret Service agent comes in and he seduces the president's wife. The very man who's called to protect him now destroys his marriage. This is a picture, a very tiny picture, of the betrayal of Satan, in that he went after the bride of Christ. You see, we were the bride of Christ back in the garden. The Adam and Eve were the bride. They were sons of God, and they were the bride of Christ, and they were the stewards of creation. So he went to the bride, and it's really poignant that it was the woman that he approached first, because he was after the bride, and he seduces her. He deceives her and seduces her. And then the same happens with Adam, except he's not deceived. Okay. Everybody with me so far? Can we keep going? If there's any questions, now's the time. I need you to be on microphone so I can hear you. Which part are you struggling? Oh, with the timeline?
I'm still struggling with the fall itself. The fall.
Like when he deceives them?
And I'm aligning my thoughts.
Okay.
In the sense that there is an argument going in. Was Lucifer judged twice?
Yes.
I'm just thinking about that.
He had a partial judgment.
Twice in the sense that in the garden, God passes judgment.
Yes.
On the snake. So that was not on the serpent. So it was not Lucifer. It was serpent.
Serpent snake.
Serpent snake. So that wasn't Lucifer at all.
Yeah.
So it's a different thing altogether.
We're going to get to that judgment. Coming up very soon is God judging the snake. Let me just clarify this. So there are several levels of judgment for Satan. The first one is when he's thrown out of the throne room. I believe he goes directly to earth, okay? And then he profanes, earth, all right? And then in the garden, you're going to see he's given the judgment about he's going to be slithering in the dust. We're going to talk about that. And then we also see that the final judgment of Satan is when he's cast into the lake of fire. And he will be forever sealed there. So yes, there's at least, in my mind, 3 judgments. Cast out of heaven, and then made to slither on the earth, which we'll talk about that, what that means. And then he's cast into the lake of fire. Okay. I'm sorry, does it mean... I missed it, but she knows the answer, so there you go.
Can I?
Okay, yeah, so he was cast out, I think right before he deceived the man and woman of the throne room. He receives judgment after they sin, but that judgment is not completely fulfilled. It's partially fulfilled at the cross, okay? And then the full judgment is going to come when he's thrown into the lake of fire. Okay? But there was another question. Yes. Remind me of your name.
Favor, Basi. Favor.
Favor?
Yes.
But you've been in my trainings before.
Yes.
Yes, I recognize you, but I forgot your name. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm enjoying the lecture so far. But my question is, you have taken us through how beautiful Satan was before he was cast down. Mm-hmm. Now, we know anytime we want to draw the image of Satan, especially show our children, we have shown a very glee. So my question now is, was the beauty taken away from him? or is it still beautiful?
He
Then-
still is beautiful.
So why are we with
So-
hunt and all those stuff?
Okay. The pictures of Satan with the pitchfork. Okay. Satan wants you to think he's easily recognized. Just look for the red suit and the pitchfork and the horns. Okay? That picture came out of the Middle Ages. That was some artist in the Middle Ages. They displayed him as looking that way. There's nothing in the Bible that says he has a pitchfork, horns, or a red suit. Okay? But the truth is, he still has jewels, but they're not illumined by the holy fire. They're illumined by an evil fire. But it's enough to deceive people. And that's why Paul says he comes as an angel of light. He still has a light, but it's a twisted, corrupted fire. And it's the fire of wanting glory for yourself over God. Yes. He's not black. He's not red. He's not. Oh, isn't that terrible? Yeah, he's not black.
My mind is still around the issue of judgment.
Okay.
You have said that when he was thrown out, down from the splendor, it's like judgment had been passed. Is it that he was thrown out of the privileges he enjoyed? And
Yes.
then
He lost access.
then
to the
here he was found guilty, but is waiting the sentencing now on the
Right.
last.
He's not fully in prison. He's like,
He's been
Part-
found guilty,
He's been
but
found
he's not taken to prison.
that's correct.
So he's waiting his sentence.
Yes, but you know what? He doesn't believe he'll ever be sentenced to the fire. We look at this and we go, "Oh, he's going in the fire. God said it, it's done." He looks at it and goes, whatever. He doesn't believe it.
So the time when the Garden of Eden was created, and the time Adam stayed is not defined in the Bible. It
Correct.
will have taken years,
We- yeah,
and that
we don't
time
know.
he was in charge of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
So when he was, when God found that there was unrighteousness within his heart, he threw him, and then he disguised himself, like the Bible says, cunning.
Mm-hmm.
Then he came and executed his cunningness now on man.
Yes.
And that is when. Okay.
You got it.
Okay, thank you.
But we're going into lesson 6. I think so many questions will be answered in lesson 6. End of slideshow. Oh, I have to find this next section. Can you help me, Derek? There's actually another file in here, and I don't want to mess with this computer. And the second file will say lesson 6 to 10 or whatever. Yes. Yes. Can you say it loud?
I think we have been all jumping before the gun, and I think I'm also joining the wagon. Yes. But I wanted to know if, as we continue to get more on how the judgment came and what happened, as we continue the lessons, are we going to connect it with the work of Christ when he died on the cross? And that is exactly where we are headed to. Because we have been now talking of the judgment and the end, and now we forget in the middle that there is what Jesus did there on the cross.
Yes. And there's quite a bit more till we get to the final the crucifixion. And if I have to, I'll skip ahead on the last day, if we have to. But I don't want to end with just talking about Satan. It's yuck. Okay. All right. Briefly.
It is break time. It is break time. 15 minutes break.
I thought you were going to ask a big question. Pastor Purity's just going to give us just a minute.
Mine is not a question. You said you can't prove that Satan was actually thrown into the earth. I want to give a verse. or when? Yes, you didn't say when. No, about when I also don't have a verse. You said you can't prove he was thrown directly. That's directly. Revelation 12, verse 12. The Revelator says, "Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has but a short time."
He will realize it. But that has to do with the tribulation, and that's a whole nother Bible study. So go get yourself some tea and come back ready to learn. Okay?